Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. For those of you that like to get to the juicy story where you have the straightforward Bigfoot encounter, well, I've got that for you on this channel right now. But the full stories are really worth listening to, and I've got them listed at the bottom, because really, just the Bigfoot encounter without the whole experience from the beginning to the middle and the end is really worth listening to. But if you just want to get to the juicy encounter that people have sent in to me, by all means, here are a few examples of them right now on my channel. So get straight into the business, shall we? And let's get started.
Growing up with my younger sister Gemma, we pretty much were free to be as adventurous as we liked. Although my parents advised us never to go into the wooded area during the hunting season because that could potentially be very dangerous, with hunters using the vast estate during the hunting season for hunting spectacular species of deer with awesome racks. It wasn't sensible to go rambling around the woods on those occasions, as random accidents invariably do happen, and stray bullets have often affected people. I loved the red brick house my parents had built because it was very spacious and airy, with wide-arched white wooden framed windows throughout, a large double-sized white wooden front door, as well as a very large wrap-around white wooden deck. My bedroom was on the upper story, and one day I was glancing out of my large arch window when I saw this huge shadowy dark form darting into the woods with the dead body of a mule deer thrown over his shoulders like a large sack of potatoes. This giant creature looked like a monstrous-sized man, covered in coal-black hair. Whatever it was, I was intrigued, curious, and exceedingly inquisitive. The creature was so titanic in its proportions that it had made the huge deer on its back look almost tiny. I immediately dashed downstairs, grabbed my dad's Remington rifle, a pair of binoculars, and I simply raced into the woods as fast as I could. I wanted to find out what this huge giant creature was, that had the appearance of a human, but was way too colossal to be human. As I entered the woods, one thing got my attention, and that was a trail of blood on the forest floor from the mule deer, and this monstrous muddy footprint that measured at least 22 inches. I followed the trail of blood, and then I came to an oak tree where the dead deer had been placed and was dangling precariously on a branch that was 8 feet off the ground, and was so freshly killed it was still dripping blood from the branch onto the forest floor. I could hear the sound of very heavy feet walking through the undergrowth, and the very distinct rustle of leaves, so I immediately hid behind a large oak tree, and literally crouched down behind, making myself as small and inconspicuous as I possibly could. Then I saw him. I couldn't believe what I was actually seeing. This creature was a giant among giants. He was colossal, and he had the longest arms that I've ever seen, and a very burly, muscular, powerful, strong body that was covered in dark black hair that was about 2 inches long and incredibly matted. The creature had to possess the most Goliath-like shoulders that I have ever yet to see, and it had a very distinct bullet-shaped head. It looked like it was quite human-like, but there were aspects of this creature that were remarkably ape-like in appearance, so I don't quite know how to explain what he looked because it was an amalgamation of both species. As I was watching this creature, I was silently chastising myself for following this creature into the forest. I now realized I was staring at an apex predator, and I was behaving exactly like a mouse sitting on a cat's dinner plate, waiting to be eaten. I knew following this creature was possibly the singly most foolish thing that I could ever have done. Sometimes I was too impulsive and curious for my own good, and my father had always warned me against being too impetuous. Now I knew that if this creature got a whiff of me, I was surely dead. I felt certain about this, so I made every effort to remain as quiet as I possibly could. For some reason the silence in the wood had become airy and unnatural, as the pretty bird song I was so used to hearing was suddenly absent, and even my own breathing became airily loud. The next thing I knew that there was another one of these monstrous giants that came into view. But if it were at all possible, this giant was even more elephantine in size than the black creature, as he was covered in silvery grey hair, and his hair was marginally longer. It was like the creature was the same but different, like you get a Labrador and a Golden Retriever in the dog breeds, if you know what I mean. It was like that. These creatures were clearly not friends, and I could feel the animosity and hatred between the two of them. It reminded me of two male lions who were opposing each other viciously for dominance, because these creatures began to wrestle each other violently and aggressively. At first I thought they were fighting over the deer carcass hanging over the tree, which seemed a bit odd to me. I then suddenly realised that they were scrimmaging over a female, because suddenly she came into view. I knew she was female because she had hairy breasts and a very gentle feminine demeanour. She was covered with dark hair that had a slight red-gold hue to it, which I only happened to observe when shafts of sunlight from the forest canopy danced across her hair. I watched the female squatting on the ground as she scrutinised the battle in progress between the two burly ape-like humanoids, who proceeded to fight, and they fought with all their might. It wasn't pretty to watch. The grey hairy humanoid was colossal in size, I kid you not, and he let out the most monstrous growl that was so blood-curdling it quite literally vibrated through my chest. And to make matters worse, the black humanoid ape also unleashed another almighty roar. So in response, and truly if your eyes were shut, you would believe you were in a den of lions. It was that frightening. The grey humanoid ape definitely had the upper hand, because he was superior in strength, might and weight, and he lashed out at the dark creature with a very weighty fist and struck a huge blow across the creature's nose and jaw, causing it to bleed, and I think he may have lost a couple of teeth in the process, but I can't be sure. The grey humanoid then literally thumped the creature on the side of his head so that he passed out and lay on the ground for a couple of minutes, seemingly lifeless. He then sat on top of the dark humanoid body, like you or I would sit on a chair, and punched him violently several times, lashing him so hard that a couple of the areas of flesh were violently lacerated and bleeding from the impact of the sheer force of his weighty fists, causing the tissue to literally explode on impact. Suddenly the dark-haired creature staggered very, very slowly to his feet. He hung his head very low, and his eyes were viewing the ground in an act of surrender and submission. He grabbed the deer carcass from the tree and flung it very slowly over his shoulders, and he scuttled away, looking like a defeated foe. And I heard him whimpering, so I guess he was in pain, but I suppose that's hardly surprising, given the state of his injuries. The way he ran away, he looked so much like someone who'd been humiliated, belittled and outsmarted. I did feel desperately sorry for him, and my heart went out to him. I couldn't imagine what he must be feeling. I'm almost certain they fight over female to win her affection, and she seemed quite happy with the outcome of the battle. Maybe she really did fancy the grey-haired creature. After the black creature had left, they both proceeded to make these happy whooping sounds, as if they were deliriously delighted by the outcome. And then later on they glided off together into the depths of the forest. Seeing this altercation had led me to conclude that the males sometimes have to fight for a female suitor. Maybe it's not always the case, but I imagine from time to time it does happen when they both like the same female. Years later I was to realise that the creatures I encountered were indeed Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti or hairy man, whatever you want to call them. I know they like to remain incredibly elusive and to keep their distance from humans. They hate to be seen by us. My whole family has from time to time actually seen sightings of these Bigfoot, but never ever during the hunting season, which makes me think that they may wander away from this area at those times of the year. When we do see them, it happens so fast, at the blink of an eye, that you can almost second-guess yourself by actually saying, "Did I really see that?"
So there we are. That's the juicy bits of our stories tonight. I personally think you should go back and listen to the whole story because it makes it so much more exciting, because then you learn all about where it happened, the location, and all about the fabulous characters involved in the story. And that makes the story so much more gripping. But as I say so, go down to the description and then click on to the YouTube link, and then you will hear the whole story. Until next time, goodbye and good night.